He had not said a woman's name out loud. Not like that, not with intention, in 6 years. Not since the hospital. Not since the morning he drove home alone in the rain with a parking ticket still on the windshield and a paper cup of cold coffee in the cup holder, and nowhere to put what had just happened to him. His name was Joel Carver. He was 39 years old. He worked for a concrete contracting company out of Raleigh, and he had a 7-year-old son named Sam, who slept with a baseball glove under his pillow because he said it kept bad dreams away. Joel had never told him that didn't make scientific sense. Some things you leave alone. His coworker Pete had been after him about this for 2 months. Not loudly. Pete wasn't built for loud. He just had a way of dropping things into conversation and walking away, letting them sit there until you tripped over them. There's a woman from my wife's book club. You'd like her. No pressure. Joel had said no in 7 different ways, and Pete had accepted every one of them, and then 3 weeks later, tried again from a slightly different angle. He finally said yes on a Friday afternoon when he was tired and distracted, and Pete had chosen his moment with the precision of someone who had been waiting for exactly this. The plan was simple. A restaurant on the east side of downtown, Saturday at 7. Her name was Claire. He didn't ask for a photograph. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because asking felt like it would make it too real, and it was easier to keep it theoretical until he had no choice but to show up. Sam found out the way. Sam found out everything. By being 7 years old and listening to every adult conversation, as though it were a radio broadcast intended specifically for him. Joel had mentioned it on the phone to Pete while Sam was supposedly building something on the living room floor. By the time he hung up, Sam was standing in the kitchen doorway with a look on his face that Joel recognized as the outer edge of barely contained excitement. "You have a date, Sam," said. "I have dinner," Joel said. Sam's expression made clear he found this distinction unconvincing. He didn't bring it up again until the afternoon before, when he appeared in Joel's bedroom doorway and watched him standing in front of the open closet the way a man stands when he is confronting a problem he doesn't have the vocabulary for. Joel owned 2 dress shirts. One had a small stain near the second button that he was reasonably certain was invisible. He was not certain enough. Sam walked past him and studied the closet for approximately 3 seconds. "The gray one," he said. "Why the gray one?" "Because the other one has a spot." Joel put on the gray shirt. He stood at the bathroom mirror trying to do something productive with his hair, and Sam stood behind him on the edge of the tub supervising. "You look fine," Sam said. "Thank you." "You look nervous, though." "I'm not nervous." Sam said nothing. Joel fixed the collar of his shirt for the 3rd time. He was about to reach for his jacket when Sam disappeared and returned 30 seconds later carrying something small. It was a trading card, the kind from the baseball set Sam had been collecting since spring, the kind he treated with a seriousness that Joel found both amusing and quietly moving. Sam held it out. "Take this," he said. Joel looked at it. It was a card he didn't recognize, some outfielder from a minor league team, the edges slightly soft from being handled. "Sam, that's from your collection." "I know. It's for luck." Sam pushed it toward him, patient, the way he was patient with adults when they weren't catching up fast enough. "Just keep it in your pocket. You don't have to show her or anything, just so you know it's there." Joel took the card. He didn't know what else to do. Sam walked him to the door the way he always did when Joel went somewhere without him. Shoes lined up by the mat, arms around Joel's waist, chin tipped up. Joel kissed the top of his head. Their neighbor Dorothea, 71 years old, retired school teacher, the best babysitter in the county, and she knew it, was already on her way over. Sam looked up at him from the doorway with an expression that was too old for his face. Something in it made Joel's chest feel strange, the way it did sometimes when he looked at his son and saw not just who he was now but the outline of who he was going to become. "You're allowed to have a good time," Sam said. "It's okay." Joel had not been told he was allowed to do things in 6 years. He hadn't realized, until that moment, that he'd been waiting for permission. He drove with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. He parked 3 blocks away and walked, which he told himself was about the parking and not about needing the extra time to collect himself. The restaurant was the kind of downtown place that existed in every mid-sized city. Exposed brick soft lighting, a chalkboard menu near the entrance. He arrived at 6:52. He stood outside. The street behind him was ordinary and indifferent. A couple walked past. A car turned at the corner, the world going about its business, not noticing or caring that he was doing the most terrifying thing he'd done since he'd stood in a hospital hallway and had to decide which calls to make first. He knew he had faced harder things than this. He had lost his wife. He had taken a 1-year-old child home from that hospital and figured out day by day and mistake by mistake and YouTube tutorial by YouTube tutorial how to be everything that child needed. He had done all of that. He knew this was not harder. But the body doesn't keep a ranking system. It just responds to what's in front of it. And what was in front of him was a door he hadn't opened in 6 years. And the person on the other side of it was not going to be his wife. And that fact sat in his chest like something that had been there a long time and had never found the right moment to leave. He was standing there doing the math on how many minutes early was too many minutes early when he heard footsteps coming from the direction of the parking lot. Quick steps, the kind that meant someone had been running slightly behind schedule and was doing their best to make up the difference without looking like it. She was moving fast, coat buttoned wrong, one button off, the whole line of it skewed, and she was scanning the entrance with the look of someone checking whether the right person was already there. When her eyes landed on Joel, something in her posture changed. Not relaxing, exactly. More like a person who has found their footing on uncertain ground. Joel opened the door. She stepped into the warmth of the restaurant, and he was about to say something. His name, probably, or hello, or some other perfectly reasonable collection of sounds. When she stopped, she looked at him. Then she looked at his jacket pocket, where the trading card was, the edge of it visible just above the seam, the corner of it sticking out half an inch. She went very still for a moment. Then she said, quietly, with the kind of careful precision that meant she had thought about whether to say this and decided to anyway, "Is that a 1987 Topps?" Joel blinked. It was not what he had expected. He wasn't sure what he had expected, but it was not that. His hand moved to his pocket before he knew it was moving. He took out the card. She leaned forward slightly, and her expression was not the expression of someone making small talk. It was the expression of someone who recognized something. "My dad collected those," she said. "He had that whole set." The door swung closed behind them. Joel stood in the warmth of the restaurant looking at this woman he had never met. Coat misaligned, hair slightly windblown, eyes entirely steady, and felt the floor tilt approximately 1 inch beneath his feet. Her name was Claire Ashford. She worked in urban planning for the county, which was how she knew Pete's wife. And she had driven from the north side of the city and taken a wrong turn somewhere near the highway that had added 11 minutes to her drive, which explained the coat. They were seated at a corner table, the kind that restaurants put aside for people who might need more room than a regular table provides, and Joel was grateful for it in the way you're grateful for things without stopping to examine why. "The card," he said, once they were seated and the menus were open. "You actually know what it is. I grew up watching baseball," she said. "My dad and I had a whole system. Saturday mornings, radio on, cards spread out on the kitchen table. We'd sort them by team, then by year, then by his own personal ranking system that he never fully explained to me." Something shifted in her expression. "He passed away 3 years ago." "I'm sorry," Joel said. She nodded. The way someone nods when they've made a kind of peace with something and no longer need the sympathy to land heavily. "The sorting system died with him. I've never been able to reconstruct it." Joel turned the card once in his hand. "Sam, my son, he's been building a collection since April. He has a system too. I'm not sure I understand it either." "How old?" 7. She smiled. Not a performance of warmth, just warmth, actual and direct. "He sent you with a lucky card." "He did." "That's a good kid. He's the best person I know," Joel said, and then heard himself say it and felt the truth of it the same way you feel the ground after a long time in the air. Simple and certain and slightly vertiginous. Claire looked at the menu and then back at him. And there was something in the way she looked at him that was different from the tilted head expression he had grown used to. The one that meant, "I feel sorry for you, and I want you to know I feel sorry for you." She didn't do that. She just looked at him the way a person looks at someone they are genuinely trying to see. They ordered. The conversation moved the way conversations do when two people are being honest with each other and have stopped trying to manage the impression they're making. He learned that she had moved to Raleigh from Cincinnati 4 years ago for a job that had turned out to be different from the job she was hired for, and she had stayed anyway because she'd found something better by accident. She ran on Sunday mornings. She could not keep houseplants alive. She had opinions about baseball that were more specific than he had anticipated, and that he found, to his own surprise, genuinely interesting. She learned that he had been doing this work since he was 23, that he'd taken on a second job briefly when Sam was 2 and dropped it the following year because missing bedtimes cost more than it paid, and that he had recently spent 4 Saturday afternoons trying to teach himself the infield fly rule so he could explain it to Sam correctly. "Did it work?" she asked. "Sam now knows the infield fly rule better than I do and takes some satisfaction in correcting me." She laughed. Short, real, slightly surprised at herself, and something in his chest released a fraction of what it had been holding. It was somewhere past the main course, while the waiter was making his way toward them with the kind of expression that meant he was about to ask about dessert, that Joel found himself looking at her and thinking about the coat again. The misaligned buttons, the hair that was still not quite what it had been when she left the house. He had noticed both things at the door and filed them away without knowing why. But now, across the table from her, he understood what he hadn't then. She had not arrived effortless. She had arrived the same way he had. Slightly braced, slightly imperfect, and the composure she was carrying now was something she had assembled and was maintaining with some effort. It was not her default setting tonight. It was a choice. He set down his water glass. "Can I ask you something?" "You've been asking me things all night. This one's different." He paused. "When you recognized the card, when you said something about it right away, most people would have just let that go. Just made some neutral comment and moved on. You just said it. Directly." Claire's eyes dropped to the table for a moment. Not the way someone looks down when they're hiding something. The way someone looks down when they're deciding how much of something to give. She reached into her bag. She took out her wallet. Dark leather, well worn, the kind that had been in use long enough to have taken on the shape of her hands. And from inside it she removed a photograph. Small, printed on regular paper, the edges soft from years of folding. She set it on the table between them. Joel leaned forward. It was a picture of a man, mid-60s, maybe older, sitting in a lawn chair with a card spread across his knees and an expression of complete absorption on his face. Behind him, barely visible in the background, was a small girl with her chin propped in her hands watching him. "That's my dad," she said. "And that's me in the back. I was maybe 8. She looked at it the way you look at something you've looked at so many times it has become part of how you remember yourself. I found it in his things after he died. I didn't know anyone had taken it. My mom must have." She picked it up and held it carefully for a moment. "I've kept it in my wallet since then." Because he's looking at the cards the way he always looked at them, like they mattered, like taking them seriously was the right thing to do. She set it gently back inside. "When I saw that card in your pocket, I knew it was the same thing, the same reason." The waiter came. They both said no to dessert without looking at each other, which Joel noticed. Then, she said the thing she hadn't said yet. It was right there at the edge of the table, and he had not reached for it. And she said it herself. "I almost didn't come tonight." He looked at her. "I sat in the parking lot for 12 minutes, she said, keys in my hand. "I had a very good internal argument going for why I should just go home. What changed your mind?" She glanced at her bag, where the wallet was. "I was looking for my parking stub. I opened my wallet and I saw the picture, and I thought." She stopped. "Tried again. He used to say that showing up was the most important part, that you could figure out the rest once you were there. But you had to show up first. Joel held that for a moment. He thought about his driveway, the truck engine running, 6 minutes before he finally put it in reverse. I sat in my own driveway for 6 minutes, he said. Something in her face changed. Small, the way small changes can carry more weight than large ones. We're both ridiculous, she said. We're both something, Joel said. They walked out at 9:51. The street was quieter than it had been when he arrived. The temperature had dropped. Their breath showed faintly in the cold air, small white clouds that appeared and dissolved before they could amount to anything. They stood on the sidewalk in the way people stand when a thing is ending, and neither one knows exactly how to mark it. Joel knew this shape. He had imagined it, vaguely and reluctantly, earlier in the week, the end of the evening, the appropriate conclusion, the handshake or the nod that would let him return to the life he understood. Claire reached into her bag. She took out her wallet, she removed the photograph, she held it out to him. Joel looked at it in her hand. That's yours. I know. She kept her hand where it was. I've had it for 3 years. I kept it because I needed to remember what it looked like when someone treated something small like it was worth taking seriously. A pause. I think your son already knows that. I think you might need the reminder more than I do right now. He took it. The paper was lighter than it looked, which made it heavier to hold. He stood on the sidewalk with a stranger's most important thing in his hand, and felt the full weight of having been trusted with it. There was something he wanted to say. He was aware of it the way you're aware of a word that won't surface. Present, real, just out of reach. Something true, something proportionate to what she had just done. What he said was, "Thank you." This was really something. Claire smiled. It was genuine, which somehow made the inadequacy of what he'd said worse. It was, she said. She turned and began walking toward the parking lot. Joel turned in the opposite direction, his shoes on the pavement, a car somewhere to his left. The city doing what cities do, which is continue regardless. He counted his steps without deciding to. 3, 7, 11, 14. He stopped. He stood on the sidewalk and he understood, with complete and unambiguous clarity, exactly what he was doing. He had done this before. Not with Claire. He had never met Claire before tonight, but with the shape of this moment which had appeared in different forms over 6 years. The moment where something possible showed up, and he found a reason to let it go by. And then he went home to his routine and his son, and the life he had built that was good and real and quiet and contained, and told himself that was enough. He was very good at telling himself things. He could hear her footsteps behind him growing faint. His chest was doing something loud and inconvenient. He turned around. She was maybe 25 feet away, walking with her chin slightly down against the cold. Claire. One word. Her name. He had said it maybe 4 times over the course of the evening, and each time it had been a word in a sentence. Now it was its own sentence. Now it meant everything he hadn't said on the sidewalk, and the choice he'd been about to make, and Sam's voice in the doorway. "You're allowed to have a good time. It's okay." She stopped. She turned. Across the space between them, she looked at him. Joel took a breath, the air cold and sharp in his lungs, and walked back toward her. He didn't say the thing he'd wanted to say. Not that night, standing in the cold with the city moving quietly around them. But he walked back, and they stood together under the awning of a dry cleaner that had been closed for hours, and he asked if he could call her. She said yes. He said he would. She looked at him the way someone looks when they believe you. Which was more than he had earned, given the previous 30 seconds. He drove home with the photograph on the passenger seat. Dorothea let herself out when he came through the door. She had her own key, had pushed it on him 2 years ago, had explained that this was not a discussion. She gave him a look that contained approximately 4 specific questions. He gave her a look that said later. She put on her coat and left. The house was the way it always was when Sam was asleep. A particular kind of quiet, a quality of stillness that still carried his presence in it. A half-finished drawing on the kitchen counter. A sneaker in the middle of the hallway, its partner somewhere unknowable. A cup of water on the end table by the couch that Sam had poured himself and then forgotten about. Joel picked up the sneaker. He set it by the door. He turned off the kitchen light. He sat down on the hallway floor outside Sam's room, back against the wall, knees up, and put the photograph and the trading card side by side on the floor in front of him. He looked at them, the trading card on the left, minor league outfielder, slightly soft at the corners, handled by small, careful hands, carried across town in a jacket pocket as a piece of faith offered by a 7-year-old who understood, in the way children sometimes understand things without having language for them, that his father needed something to hold on to. The photograph on the right. A man in a lawn chair, cards spread across his knees, expression of complete and unself-conscious absorption. A girl in the background, watching, 2 people who had made something important out of something small and had not been wrong to do so. 2 objects, different decades, different hands, different reasons. And somehow they had ended up here, side by side on the hallway floor, making the same argument. Joel thought about what Claire had said, that she had kept the photograph to remember what it looked like when someone took a small thing seriously. He thought about 12 minutes in a parking lot and 6 minutes in a driveway. He thought about the question he could not stop moving around. Not whether Claire was someone worth knowing. She plainly was. The question was about him. Whether 6 years of building a life that was sufficient and functional and self-contained had used up all the room he had left for something uncertain. Whether he still had the capacity, somewhere in himself, to let something matter that he hadn't planned on. He was 39 years old. He had a son who carried baseball cards the way other people carried photographs, who sent his father out the door with a piece of his collection, and the instruction that it was okay to have a good time. He had spent 6 years being exactly what Sam needed him to be, and not once had he stopped to ask whether he was allowed to want something for himself. He sat with that question for a while. The house settled around him in the way old houses settle. Sam's breathing was audible through the 2-inch gap in the door, slow and even. He was still sitting there when the door swung open. Sam appeared in the gap, squinting against the hallway light. His hair was flattened on one side. He was wearing the pajamas with the planets on them, and he was carrying his baseball glove with the loose, unconscious grip of someone who had reached for it in sleep and kept going. He looked at Joel sitting on the floor with the expression he always used for adults, doing inexplicable things. Interested, unsurprised, willing to wait for an explanation. He came and sat beside Joel without being asked. Joel put his arm around him. Sam leaned in, solid and warm. He looked at the 2 things on the floor. He picked up the trading card first, looked at it, set it back down in its spot. Then he picked up the photograph, holding it the way he held his own cards. Both hands, the proper gravity. He studied it for a long time. The man in the lawn chair, the cards across his knees, the girl in the background. Sam set it down with the same care he'd picked it up. "Is she okay?" he said. His voice was soft with sleep, and the question had the directness that sleep sometimes gives to people. No approach, no scaffolding, just the thing itself. Joel looked at the photograph. "Yeah," he said. "I think she is." Sam nodded once, the nod of someone receiving information that confirms what they had already suspected. He stayed beside Joel for a few more minutes, his weight warm and real against Joel's side, and then he went back to bed without another word. Joel heard the soft thump of him getting back under the covers. Then quiet. Joel sat in the hallway alone for a little while longer. Then he picked up both objects, put them together on the kitchen counter, and went to sleep. He called Claire the next afternoon. They talked for 35 minutes, and it felt like 12. He called her 4 days after that, and the conversation found its footing faster, the way the second time always does. The first time the 3 of them were in the same place, Joel was more frightened than he'd been outside the restaurant. That surprised him. He had managed the restaurant. He had turned around on the sidewalk. He had made the calls. He had done all of that. And yet, standing in the parking lot of Lakeview Community Park on a Sunday in late October, watching Claire's car turn in near the entrance, he felt his chest do something that had nothing to do with himself. Sam was next to him in his red jacket and his second-best sneakers. The first best being currently retired due to a mud incident he had declined to explain. and he was holding his glove the way he held it when he wasn't sure whether he was going to need it or not. He was not talking, which was unusual. He was watching the car. Claire got out carrying a bag and a thermos, and the slightly braced expression of someone working hard not to appear like they were working hard. She had a green jacket Joel hadn't seen before. Her hair was fully in order today, which he noticed the way you notice when something has changed from the first time you saw it. She and Joel exchanged a look that communicated, without any words, most of what they had talked about over the past 3 weeks. Then they both looked at Sam. Sam looked at Claire. Claire did not crouch down to his level. She did not put on the voice some adults use with children that communicates underneath the words that they find the child interesting in the way they find animals at a zoo interesting. She just stood there with her bag and her thermos and let Sam make up his mind about her. Sam was methodical about it. He started with her face, moved to the bag, which had a logo on it for a AAA baseball team, and his eyes stopped there for a visible moment before moving back up. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Claire said. "Is that a Mudcats bag?" She looked down at it. "It is. I've had it since they played at the old stadium. You know them? They're single A," Sam said, with the authority of someone who had spent considerable time with this information. "The Rangers affiliate." "That's correct," she said. Sam considered this. Something in his expression settled, not all the way, but in the direction of settled. They walked to the open field near the pond. Joel and Claire talked. Easy conversation, the kind that had started on the phone and found its natural register here. Sam walked slightly ahead of them, throwing his glove up and catching it, absorbed in some internal calculation. They found a spot on a bench near the water. Claire opened her bag and took out a small scorebook. The kind with the grid pages, the kind Joel hadn't seen since Little League. She opened it without comment and began filling something in, pencil moving with the focused ease of someone in the middle of a project. Sam lasted about 90 seconds before he materialized beside her. He did it the way he did everything he wasn't sure he was allowed to be interested in yet. Gradually, with pauses, the interest technically deniable at each individual step. Joel watched this from the corner of his eye and said nothing. Claire kept writing. She didn't acknowledge Sam's presence beside her. She just kept her pencil moving. Sam's chin dropped to see the page. It was a scorecard. From a game, the date at the top was from 2 weeks ago. She had filled in the lineup, the innings, the plays, in the careful shorthand of someone who had been doing this a long time. "You score games?" Sam said. "Every one I attend," she said, without looking up. "Do you do it by hand or on an app?" "By hand." Apps don't remember the same way. Sam went very still. Joel recognized the stillness. It was the stillness of someone encountering a piece of information that has reorganized something in them slightly. "My grandpa scored games," Sam said. "He taught me the symbols. I didn't think other people did it that way." Claire stopped writing. She looked at him, fully, directly, not with the performance of taking him seriously, but actually taking him seriously. "Which ones did he teach you?" Sam took the pencil from her, with a confidence that surprised Joel. He looked at the scorecard for a moment, then on the margin, carefully, not on the filled part, wrote K backwards. "That's a strikeout looking," Sam said. "Backward K," Claire said. "Yes." Something moved through her expression that was brief and layered. She took the pencil back, and in the margin beneath his symbol, she wrote one of her own. A small diamond with an arrow through it. "That's what my dad used for a double play," she said. "I've never seen it in any official system. I think he made it up." Sam looked at it. He looked at it with the same focus he gave his own cards. Then, very carefully, he copied it in the margin below hers. Joel was looking at the pond. He was looking at the pond because if he looked at either of them at this precise moment, something was going to happen in his face that he was not prepared to have happen in a public place. Claire's voice, when it came, was quieter than usual. "He didn't get to teach you the whole system," she said. It was not a question. Sam shook his head. "He got sick. Mine too," she said. They were quiet together for a moment. Not an uncomfortable quiet. The kind of quiet that exists between people who have been given the same thing by the world and have not yet decided what to do with it. Then Sam said, "Do you want to learn the rest of his symbols?" The ones he taught me? Claire looked at him. I'd like that very much, she said. They stayed at the park until the light went low, and the cold started to mean business. On the way back along the path, Sam walked between them, not touching either, but close. When the path narrowed near the pond's edge, he stepped naturally to Claire's side. And when she shifted her bag to her other shoulder, he reached up without asking and took her free hand, the way he took things when he had already decided they were his to take. Joel kept walking. He did not look at them. At the parking lot where the path opened back out and the cars were visible ahead, Sam looked up at Claire. "Are you going to come back?" he said. He asked it the way he asked things that mattered. Plainly, without preface, the actual question with nothing around it. Claire looked down at him. She took in his face, the red jacket, the glove still tucked under his arm, the shoes that had seen better days. Something moved through her expression that had no clean name, not quite happiness and not quite the opposite of it, something that lived in the place where both could coexist. She looked at Joel. Joel looked at her. She looked back down at Sam. "If you'll have me," she said. Sam thought about this with the seriousness it deserved. Then he nodded once. Definitive. Done. He ran ahead toward the car because there was a gust of leaves near the rear tire that required his immediate attention, and it would have been irresponsible to ignore them. Joel and Claire stood at the edge of the parking lot and watched him go. There was a great deal Joel could have said in that moment. He was aware of all of it. The 6 years, the driveway, the sidewalk, the photograph on the passenger's seat, the question he'd been unable to stop circling since he'd sat on the hallway floor alone. There was a lot of it. He said none of it, because the afternoon had already said it more clearly than he could. He thought about a baseball card placed in his pocket by a 7-year-old who knew that showing up was hard and wanted his father to have something to hold on to. He thought about 12 minutes and 6 minutes, and how neither of them had driven home, even though they both almost had. He thought about the margin of a scorecard and 2 symbols written there by different hands. You didn't have to be ready before you tried. You didn't have to have it figured out first. You just had to show up. His son had understood that before he did, which was humbling, and probably as it should be. Sam had reached the leaves. He turned around and looked back at them, the glove raised in the impatient, beckoning gesture of a 7-year-old with better things to do than wait for adults to finish standing around. "Come on," he called. Joel looked at Claire. She was already walking toward him.